When did Putin lie? What do you mean, when did Putin lie? Throughout the entire negotiations process, Vladimir Putin went to Donald Trump directly and said, if you give me a sweetheart deal where you just basically recognize, if you give me a sweetheart deal and you force Ukraine to recognize all the territories that I have forcibly annexed, anyway, before we get to the Epstein stuff, Trump has now arrived at the Democratic Party's conclusion on Ukraine, it seems. This is another I told you so moment. I did think maybe Trump could present an alternative with Vladimir Putin, but no such alternative can exist without getting China to the table. And considering that Donald Trump has been incredibly antagonistic towards China and weirdly conciliatory towards Russia for no reason other than the fact that I think he wants to have sex with Vladimir Putin, while simultaneously shitting on his proxy, Ukraine, Donald Trump has now finally arrived at the Joe Biden position, which is crazy. As someone who's in favor of a ceasefire where Russia scales back its military conquest in Ukraine in an effort to avoid further death and further collapse, I thought maybe there was a moment there. There was a pathway there. It was unlikely. And of course, all of that fell apart as soon as this dipshit started shitting on Zelensky. And as I said, American foreign policy is uniparty regardless. And now we're back to the uniparty position where Donald Trump is talking about giving Patriot missiles to Ukraine. However, still remains. A major hurdle for Ukraine is manpower. What will they do?
Okay, is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia, but we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And would like to see it end. It wasn't my war. It was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. But regardless, we make the greatest military equipment in the world, whether it's missiles. You saw that recently in Iran, the way those planes flew in, they had every single 14 bombs hit every target.
Yeah, secondary tariffs will likely hit China, Germany, and India because these countries buy lots of Russian oil. I'm from Ukraine and I'm basically on lockdown because if I'm conscription age and if I go out, because I'm conscription age and if I go out, I might get caught on the steer ice style. Yeah. What Russian products does the USA even bring in? No, the remaining way of actually trying to hit Russia is by sanctioning countries that are secondary to enter the global marketplace, like India, for example, in an effort to try and sever ties between India and Russia, which I don't know how successful he could be on this as well. I don't know how much success he can see here because he's up the bag in a meaningful way for every other country on the planet. The only way to do this, the only way to arrive at a reasonable outcome here was by not applying pressure to China, but offering an olive branch to China and getting China to apply pressure to Russia. That's what I think, at least. And I'm a stupid guy. I'm not the smartest guy out there, okay? But of course, he was not interested in doing that at all. He was not interested in getting everybody, the actual players, involved. And instead, personally thought that he could just use his direct line of communication with Vladimir Putin and all of the praise that he's heard from Vladimir Putin that he took as sincere. He foolishly thought, as long as I follow through on whatever the Vladimir Putin demands of me, then I'll be able to pack this up. Some of the conditions that Vladimir Putin gave him were insane. Some of the positions that he got from Vladimir Putin as like concessions that he forced down Zelensky's throat were absolutely insane. It would have been non-starters. And yet Vladimir Putin, much like how Benjamin Netanyahu did with the Brandon team, was able to use the negotiations process and the ceasefire conditions and the ceasefire back and forth as a way to sever America's existing ties with Ukraine, as a way to halt weapons transfers and cause more severe blows to Ukraine in the process. Vladimir Putin played him like a fiddle, 100%. That's what he did. And he's such an absolute dumbass with a cult of personality that people thought he was actually brilliant. They still presented as brilliant. There was a lot of quote unquote anti-war people out there, or there were a lot of, subtle pro-Russian support out there that also presented this as like Trump's paving a bold new path with Russia. One of the dumbest things I think you can do in any negotiations process is over your guy in the negotiations. If your goal is to end the hostilities, if your goal is to actually get to a ceasefire, then it is perhaps the dumbest thing you can do if you're undermining your proxy in the conversation. And in this circumstance, it was Zelensky. And that's precisely what Trump did. Yes, but you have 2020 hindsight. How could Trump know Pootie Poo would lie? I mean, I don't think that requires hindsight. I know you're making a joke.
To go in response.
In what?
How far are you willing to go if Putin were to escalate, send more bombs in the coming days?
Don't ask me a question like that. How far? I want to get the war settled. They're not Americans that are dying in it, and I have a problem, and JD has a problem. It's a stance that he's had for a long time. They're not Americans dying, but there are a lot of people dying, and on something that should be able to be settled. And we all agree with that.
When did Putin lie? What do you mean, when did Putin lie? Throughout the entire negotiations process, Vladimir Putin went to Donald Trump directly and said, if you give me a sweetheart deal where you just basically recognize, if you give me a sweetheart deal and you force Ukraine to recognize all the territories that I have forcibly annexed, okay, then I know that you have an investment in like ending this war, which is seen as like broadly unpopular by your base. I will give that to you. I will give you a cessation of hostilities. That was a lie. And you want to know how that was a lie? Yeah, my mom just walked in. Because the moment that like cessation of hostilities started being a point of, the moment that like a ceasefire bargain was followed up with like concessions from Zelensky, what did Vladimir Putin say? What did Vladimir Putin say and do? Oh, just kidding. Actually, we don't want this because a cessation of hostilities would only allow Ukraine to re-up and rearm. That's it. As soon as Zelensky was seen as conceding to these already ridiculous positions that would have for him, both for his further political ambitions, but maybe even his life. Even after all of that, Vladimir Putin was like, oh yeah, we can't actually do a ceasefire. And they just kept pushing. The U.S. didn't comply with any of Putin's demands. He stated his position. How is that a lie? Brother, Putin's demands beyond what Trump had already secured from Ukraine were insane. If you're talking about additional territories that they had not even militarily conquered at this point, you're out of your mind. Okay, you might as well just give Vladimir Putin the entirety of Ukraine then. Like what kind of, that's not how diplomacy is conducted. The shit that Zelensky conceded on was already maximalist, was already incredibly unfair. You're out of your mind if you want, Putin's demand was just basically to give up the entirety of the country at that point. Like Donald Trump gave a massive W to Vladimir Putin if Vladimir Putin were to concede and actually go along with the ceasefire terms that were designed. It was far more than I think is appropriate. Okay? Far more. Like whether it be the extraction of whatever natural resources Ukraine has on top of all the territories that are considered de facto a part of Russia, that Russia was militarily able to secure. So it was a massive W, but Russia didn't take it. You're brilliant. Yes, it was. But I think Vladimir Putin considers this not enough, and he thinks that he can get more. He can push more militarily, kill more people, take over more Ukrainian territory by force, and eventually come back to the table at another stalemate with even more territory. Off topic, but just seen Pegasus video and I'm conflicted. What, like the spyware, the Israeli spyware? Isn't your analysis that Ukraine is several months from losing via being out of troops? If you were in charge, why would you accept concessions when you're going to get the whole country like you said? I don't think they're going to get the whole country. And even if they were to take over more territory, I never said that Russia would be able to annex the entire country and maintain it militarily. I think that's a long-standing death sentence. Ukraine has a right to self-determination, but without an army, they can't enforce it. My analysis in this regard is that you can't get Russia to do anything. You can't concede because it's a foreign adversary that has designed its entire economy around American sanctions. So you have to bring in other people, major partners of Russia, to the table, China being one of them, to once and for all pack this up. If your goal is truly to get to some kind of cessation of hostilities, then that's what you have to do. Trump didn't do that. He just undermined his own proxy and thought that that would allow that, and gave a sweetheart deal to Vladimir Putin, thinking that this would allow Vladimir Putin to come to the table and say yes. So he spent all of his social and political capital shitting on Zelensky, and now he has to go back on that and give more money and more weapons to Ukraine, which is the exact opposite of his campaign promises, which puts him at odds with some members of his base, at least.
This group of people, we want to defend our country, but, ultimately, having a strong Europe is a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, please, in the back.
Yeah, Putin escalates.
What is this? If your membership in a military alliance is viewed as an active threat by a country, they will act with force against it. Can Mexico join a military alliance with China? By your logic, yes. Would the U.S. government tolerate that? No. Okay. First of all, I understand the NATO posturing playing a role in this. One, not only am I anti-NATO, but two, I've also talked about how Biden it goes back beyond Biden. It goes back all the way to George W. Bush saying on his way out that he was going to bring Georgia and Ukraine into NATO. Okay. Very quickly after that, Russia seized control over Georgian territory. Okay. Making that already impossible situation even less possible. And now what Vladimir Putin did in Georgia, he's basically doing in Ukraine as well, in a way worse and way more bloody fashion. So every step of the way, there could have been assurances, and also there was no real interest from any of the Western nations in terms of bringing Ukraine into NATO anyway. Vladimir Putin knew that. If I know that, he knows that. So he's just using that as a reason for why he wanted to militarily handle Ukraine. He already had tremendous control over two territories, LPR and DPR, in Ukraine. There was already active conflict going on there. He had already forcibly taken over Crimea, which was still seen as Russian territory. No country is going to allow a nation that has been occupied by Russia into NATO anyway. Every other country understands, even if Vladimir Putin hadn't done that, it's impossible for them to allow Ukraine into NATO and vote for Ukraine to join NATO. Why would they? Russia is a major energy provider, okay? Russia is literally a major energy provider for European. If Russia had continued doing trade, they would have been fine. If they continued doing soft power, they would have been fine. Now, they've lost a fuck ton of people in the process. And the entire economy is a war economy. Anyway, here we are.
And when it comes to
in this endless bloody quagmire.
CBS's Jim Laporta has learned a recent defense intelligence assessment shows Ukraine.
What is this? There's absolutely no circumstance Putin will stop destroying until it starts hurting his regime. The Syrians didn't kick out Russia by getting China on some table. NATO is no threat to Russia. Bro, you can't be serious if you're talking about Syria. Yeah, we should just bring the dude. This is the Ryan Ruth position. Ironically, we have 2,000 NATO trained Afghan soldiers waiting to go, but instead of NATO trained Afghan soldiers, we should bring the Salafists into Ukraine and have them fight. We should have the Turkish Free Syrian Army move away from Syria into Ukraine. Just ship them out. Ship all the ISIS aligned. ISIS adjacent groups into Ukraine and have them fight to defend Ukrainian soil. You can't compare Russia's military campaign in Ukraine to Russia's warm water port in Syria. It's not comparable.
Shortfall in artillery and in drones will lead to marked Russian territorial gains in 2026, with Russia gaining 7-1 firepower superiority by this winter. How can you get them what they need if Congress will not approve in the House any new funding? Is it what Senator Blumenthal just laid out?
Well, just stay tuned for tomorrow's announcement. The idea of America selling weapons to help Ukraine is very much in play. We've given Ukraine a lot. We've given them money. We've given them military aid. We now have a minerals agreement with Ukraine that's worth trillions of dollars. So I don't want to get ahead of the president, but stay tuned about seized assets. The Europeans want to limit the interest on the assets to go to Ukraine. Secretary Bessent wants to go further. Stay tuned about a plan to go after the seized assets more aggressively. Stay tuned for a plan where America will begin to sell to our European allies tremendous amount of weapons that can benefit Ukraine. Putin has calculated that we would get tired and Europe would get weary. He made a huge mistake. NATO is bigger and stronger, and we're more committed than ever to make sure he does not take Ukraine by force. So Congress is on the verge of passing the most consequential sanction package in the history of the country. It will give President Trump tools he doesn't have today, a literal sledgehammer. And the big offender here is China, India, and Brazil. India buys oil from Russia cheap and resells it. That's despicable. I've talked to President Trump. He said last week it's time to move. He's tried to entice Putin to the table, but my goal is to end this war, and the only way you're going to end this war is to get people who prop up Putin, make them choose between the American economy and help him only have one negotiator, and that's going to be President Trump.
Okay, but like, what happens when there's no hands left to hold the weapons? Like, sure, we're selling the weapons, and that's definitely a necessity, right, for Ukraine to defend itself. But what happens when there's no people? Like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna force Ukraine to get more aggressive? I said with their conscription practices, which is already pretty aggressive to begin with, or are you going to literally forcibly send Ukrainian men that are of conscription age in Western countries that have refugee status right now back to Ukraine so they can be shipped off to the front lines? Is there an appetite for that? What kind of dangers does that present for Ukrainian stability? What does Ukraine look like 10 years in the future if all of their able-bodied men have been slaughtered in the process of trying to push Russians back like, I don't know, 10 meters? That's it. I don't know where this goes, because there are currently millions of Ukrainian men that live, tens of millions of Ukrainian men and women that live in the United States of America and in Europe. Okay, they got refugee status after Russia invaded Ukraine. Are you going to send those guys back? Are you going to forcibly go and send people back to Ukraine so they can be shipped off to a facility and trained to fight and defend Ukraine? Because without that, I don't see any other way that Ukraine gets to hold out further.
Maximum flexibility to end this war. China, India, and Brazil, you're about to get hurt big time if you keep
Russia invaded Georgia in 2008 for territory, Ukraine in 2014 for territory, but somehow the invasion of 2022 was only because of NATO. Sure, bro. I mean, dude, I already accounted for that. And yes, both could trace back to NATO. Like I said, on his way out, George W. Bush literally said Georgia and Ukraine should join NATO. Immediately after George W. Bush said that, invaded Georgia. So yes, part of that is NATO involvement. Even if India is incidentally one of the countries impacted by U.S. secondary sanctions on Russia, I do not understand why U.S. officials, not just Graham, are calling New Delhi out by name in public at a time when they are ostensibly working together regarding China.
Then you had the helicopters shoot a total of 30 bombs, 30 missiles, and they hit every single Marco, is that right? Every single piece, every single target. And it was, I guess, on a scale of 0 to 10, they say it was about a 15. That's how successful it was. That's how lethal it was, a word they like to use nowadays. But it was an amazing, well-organized attack that people in this country wanted to do for 24 years. You know, when we had the pilots in last week, they were saying, sir, we've been practicing this for 24 years, meaning people, not them, but other people that are a little older now. But they too, and you were the one that let us do it. But we've been practicing it 3 to 4 times a year for 22, 24 years, because they always knew they had to stop Iran from doing what they were doing, which is trying to come up with a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And we did it very successfully. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it.
Brazil is not going to budge its sovereignty with Lula in power right now. Lula is no strong leftist leader by any means, but he's a nationalist like no other we've had before. He's conceding national media interviews saying that the time for U.S. intervention here is over. Yeah, I think that with the exception of some Latin American leaders that are servants of the West and Western interests or the IMF, like, well, you know who I'm talking about. Many Latin American countries, many South American countries at this point are entirely anti-U.S. as their position. They've hardened their stances. Yeah, Milei and Bukele is who I was talking about. Yeah, Lula is not like that's fair to say Lula is not a strong leftist leader. I mean, he is decent. But if there's one thing that unites a lot of South American leadership at this point, perhaps a force that is even more galvanizing than socialism, okay, certainly more galvanizing than socialism, is sovereignty. And sovereignty is nationalism. Sovereignty is being rid of American intervention. I'll give you an example. It's one I used in the aftermath of Maduro's suspicious election victory, right? For years and years, Maduro's popularity has actually relied on the Chavistas as a movement in the country. Okay. He's eaten good off of the Chavez popularity in the country. And yet, year over year, due to his mismanagement, due to endless crippling sanctions, due to being shut out from the global stage, shut out from the global markets, and a collapsed Venezuelan economy, Maduro's popularity has fallen apart, and also due to corruption. Okay? He's hardened his positions. He's gotten more aggressive in the state's repression. Some might say it is an inevitability or a necessity to maintain control and maintain sovereignty. I'm not here to make that argument. I'm simply saying that the way that people see Maduro in Venezuela is nowhere near as it once was, and is certainly nowhere close to the way that people saw Chavez. Like, Chavez had a real popular movement. So popular that it actually helped Maduro in the beginning. Having said that, in the aftermath of Maduro's last election victory, okay, every single Latin American leader came out and said, we don't know about this. Like, we don't know about what happened here. Until the United States of America and the OAS came out and said, we do not agree with the election that took place in Venezuela. That literally stopped every single Latin American, South American, North American, every single country from criticism against Maduro. It stopped it dead in its tracks, because as soon as America interfered, as soon as the United States of America interfered and released a statement on whether or not the election was real or valid or legitimate, they were like, all right, we're done. We're not involved in this. Maduro is the leader of Venezuela. Shut up. Because with the exception of Bukele and the exception of Milei, South American leadership sees American intervention as the worst possible outcome. And that is an understandable position to have if American-backed leadership like Bolsonaro has ruined your country, or your country has a not so distant history of American intervention that was incredibly violent. So for them, it's a non-starter. It's the quickest way to immediately take the opposing stance. No, Mexico included. That's why I said South America, but also even North America. There's like Mexico included, Latin American countries. Most Latin American countries, the moment that America intervenes in any Latin American country's affairs, they go, all right, that it's a non-starter. So I think that's the reason why I don't see Lula capitulating to Trump's ridiculous demands and his like tariffs, his tariffs regime. I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially now that there is a secondary market that is global, with China being the primary engine backing its existence. It makes it all the more difficult, in my opinion, for America to just like move its muscle around. Exactly. Brazilian hogs are now worried about our sovereignty. So it's also ironic because Trump is trying to pressure Lula into dropping charges against Bolsonaro with the tariffs. But all that's doing is lowering support for Bolsonaro and Tarcísio, potential Bolsonaro replacement for the next election. Crazy didn't catch a ban. Echo chamber. What? You didn't even say anything. Why would we ban you?
Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year. So they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it. And we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot.
Unlike Bolsonaro, Lula was, when arrested, never asked for pardon or amnesty, or fake cried or fake got sick and went to the hospital as a method of diversion. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the one time where I will disagree with you. Bolsonaro is not fake sick. Okay, he is real sick. He's both sick in the mind and sick in the body. He is the most diseased man on the planet. So when he goes to the hospital and he has to poop out of his nose, okay, I don't think that's fake. I don't think he's like fake sick. I think he's just diseased. He is the most diseased man on the planet. So I will push back on that. He is a one-stop COVID shop. Okay? God has consistently tried to take him out. I don't know how Satan is keeping him alive. But he is walking, he is a walking disease.
A lot of money, and we don't want to do it anymore. And we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinating. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something, and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy, pretty young guy for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO. So and we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months. And if you could say a few words.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You called me on Thursday that you had taken a decision. And the decision is that you want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you do want Europeans to pay for it, which is totally logical. And this is building on the tremendous success of the NATO summit, the 5%.
Why is Mark Rutte so cringe? It's because he is the most cucked person on the planet. It's because it goes against everything that Europeans who come from a proud tradition of like maintaining empire, it goes against that. He is the most servile being in the entire European continent. Okay? It's because he just like, he gets on his hands and knees and he sucks Trump dry every day of the week. He called him daddy, dude. I mean, it's his job. He's the he's the Secretary General of NATO. It's his job. But it is incredible. He did. He texted him, Daddy Trump. You guys not remember? So if you're European and you feel like, yeah, maybe you believe that like NATO is not a protection racket and it's actually not a way for America to like forcibly sell you arms, off of the taxable revenue that you're generating, right? If you're of the mindset that like, well, you know, Putin is going to invade Norway or some shit, okay? And Putin's going to invade all the way to like Eastern Germany once again. And that's why NATO has to exist. Mark Rutte destroys that notion. He literally, or at the very least, like he presents himself as such a servile little cuck that even if you had fears that Berlin would fall to Russian control, all of a sudden you're more focused on how much of a disgusting little servile peasant. It breaks any kind of sovereignty narrative that European countries might have ever had. That's why I think people hate him, understandably. Yes, NATO attack, mini F. At the end of the day, European liberals will do whatever America asks of them. It is the left that needs to protest this 5% demand. Labor is literally cutting disability benefits at the same time, raising tens of billions for the military. Yeah, I mean, don't talk to me about the labor movement in the UK. He is now even more hated than when he was prime minister here in the Netherlands. He is known as a suck-up that bows to everyone, foreign or domestic.
But also the decision to keep Ukraine strong and the decision to increase our defense industrial production. So based on that...
Eurolibs are pissed about the 5% GDP thing. Everyone here hates it. Yeah, no shit. It's the most like burger America ass initiative, dude. 5% of your GDP, it's over. Like, it's so over. Because that means austerity for all the social safety nets that actually made your lives manageable, okay? It turns every country in the European continent into America, into little Americas, so that you can have F-35 jets. What are you going to do? An F-35 jet is not healthcare, okay? You can't do healthcare with an F-35 jet. I'm sorry. What do you think the 5% is being invested in? What do you mean? American weapons. That's it. You got countries like Germany who think like, oh, we can do a war economy ourselves. We can do military Keynesianism here in Germany. We can basically renazify and remilitarize Germany and become defense contractors ourselves. But that also destroys the entire reason for wanting more. America is demanding more from European countries, so they purchase American weapons. They don't want Europe to become a market competitor. They don't want the European defense industry to become a competitive industry to the American weapons manufacturers. That's it.
That was Europe stepping up. This is again Europeans stepping up. So I've been in contact with many countries. I can tell you that at this moment, Germany massively, but also Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Norway, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Canada, they all want to be part of this. And this is only the first wave. There will be more. So what we will do is work through the NATO systems to make sure that we know what Ukrainians need, so that we can make packages. Of course, in a way we discussed.
Your
it this
encoder
morning,
is
with
breaking.
Hasan.
It's not. It's my ISP. My ISP is busted. How can you fix the Fs, Smokey? I'm willing to hear you out. Let's do it.
At the Pentagon in a way that, of course, the US will keep on its stockpiles necessary to defend this country. That's absolutely clear. But it will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment, but also missiles, ammunition, etc., etc. So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you were planning to do in 50 days and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for them. So I really want to thank you for that. And that means the Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, it might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine and then the US later backfilling it because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job. That's a really great job.
He's literally, his position as the general secretary is basically to say, thank you for spitting on my face, Mr. President. Thank you for pissing on me. It is raining. I love it. I love the rain. It's beautiful this time of the year. Thank you.
We've been very successful in settling wars. You have India, Pakistan. You have Rwanda and the Congo. That was going on for 30 years. India, by the way, and Pakistan would have been a nuclear war within another week, the way that was going. That was going very bad.
Like the one thing, the one saving grace of liberal, capitalist, liberal democracies in the West was its diminishing, but still comparatively robust social safety nets and its public goods. And that's going away. OBS settings advanced, scroll down the network, dynamically change bitrate to manage congestion. What is this? Advanced. Scroll down. I don't even think I can do that while I'm live, but scroll down to network. It's not, oh yeah, I can't scroll down the network and change network while I'm live. I guess I could try and do that by swapping over to another. Hold on. I'll do a BRB screen real quick and see if I can do it. All right. Let's see. Let's see if it works. And we got him, boys. Let's see. Maybe there's no more lag. No more ads.
We did that through trade. I said, we're not going to talk to you about trade unless you get this thing settled. And they did. And they were both great leaders. And they were great. But Rwanda and the Congo, that was going on for 30 years. And at least 7 million people killed, and killed with a lot of pretty rough weapons like machetes, heads chopped off. Going on for many years. You couldn't even get near the country.
Smokey, if this still F's, I'm banning you. I'm perma banning you. Okay?
Nobody wanted to get near it. So frightening. And
I'll
we got
ban
that
you.
one solved. Serbia, Kosovo, got that solved. That was going to be one that was going to happen. And again, that was something I use. I use trade for a lot of things, but it's great for settling wars. That was really very important. We're working, Marco is working very hard with everybody here on the Strip, the Gaza Strip. I call it the Gaza Strip, one of the worst real estate deals ever made. They gave up the oceanfront property, one of the worst deals ever made. But it was supposed to bring peace, and it didn't bring peace. It brought the opposite. But we're doing pretty well on Gaza. Steve Witkoff is here, and I think we could have something fairly soon to talk about. And we solved other one that we just seem to have, Armenia and Azerbaijan. It looks like that's going to come to a conclusion, successful conclusion. We worked on Egypt with their next door neighbor who, it's a good neighbor, they're friends of mine, but they happened to build a dam which closed up water going into a thing called the Nile. I think if I'm Egypt, I want to have water in the Nile, and we're working on that one. It's a problem, but it's going to get solved. They built one of the biggest dams in the world, a little bit outside of Egypt. You know about that? You've been hearing about that one. And that turned out to be a big problem. I don't know. I think the United States funded the dam. I don't know why they didn't solve the problem before they built the dam. But it's nice when the Nile River has water It's a very important source of income and life. It's the life of Egypt, and to take that away is pretty incredible. But we think we're going to have that solved very quickly.
Enough champagne to fill the Nile.
The only one we haven't been able to get to yet is Russia. And I'm not happy. And I will tell you that Ukraine wants to do something. Again, it's a war that should have never started. If I were president, it never would have happened. I used to speak to President Putin about it a lot. It was the apple of his eye.
The new 5% doesn't go only towards weapons. It also funds R&D for things like new rails, trains, hospitals, reinforcing existing hospitals, etc. That Europe as a whole just hasn't been putting enough into its defense, which is why Ursula herself decided to invest 800 billion euros all of a sudden. It's just crazy that European countries invested less than 2% each year with all the ongoing wars. Sure, bud. Maybe it's just me, but I love NATO. When NATO invades a country, chat honestly believes it's a defensive invasion. NATO is a shining light on a truth that international law too often obfuscates. Protection rackets are profitable. Who is anyone to say that NATO's opinion isn't valid? What NATO is doing is reminding us of a dream that we forgot. That in this world, America will invade anywhere to raise Raytheon stock prices. Yeah, no, it's when Trump says you need 5% of your GDP to be dedicated to purchasing American weapons. What he actually means is like, I want you to do more socialism. I want you to desperately fund your underfunded hospitals. You know, that's what I want you to do.
But once I saw, well, they're gonna have a war here. I was outside. Election was rigged. And I was outside looking in, and I said, that thing's going to be a war. Couldn't believe it, because what Biden said was the exact opposite of what should have been said. And it started, and it's a real mess. We're losing, I guess they're losing 5,000 or 6,000 people a day. It's actually now more. I was saying 5,000 a day. It's actually more now. Mostly soldiers, but a lot of people in cities and towns that are getting blown up too. It's a horrible war, and it should be stopped. And so if it's not done, if we don't have an agreement in 50 days, that's what we're doing. Secondary tariffs, and they're biting. And I hope we don't get to the point where we do, but I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev and kill 60 people. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. But the purpose of this is to say that...
I will say, Trump does seem genuinely disturbed that Vladimir Putin is not playing ball. Like, it literally, I don't think he gives a shit about the death or whatever. Obviously, he doesn't care about anything but himself. But it does kind of feel like he's actually hurt. Like I don't know, not to be super parasocial. Not to be parasocial with Donald Trump, but like since the Vladimir stop, since that moment where he went, Vladimir stop, I've been thinking a lot about this, and it does seem like he genuinely thought Vladimir Putin actually thought he was like super cool. I think he legitimately thought when Vladimir Putin was like, "Oh, you are the best, Mr. President. You are so bold. You are so brave. You are so strong. I hate liberals." He was like, "Oh, he loves me. He thinks I'm so strong. It's real. He respects me because I'm a powerful man, just like he is. We were gonna ride off into the sunset together on horseback, no shirt. He saw me as the apple of his eye." Like it feels like he's just actually hurt. Like he looks genuinely disturbed.
This is a very big deal we've made. This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased.
That's right. Now I'm gonna send Patriot missiles to Ukraine. I didn't want to do it. Zell Disney is basically Kamala Harris, and I hate him. But now I'm sending him reluctantly the Patriot missiles because Vladimir hurt my feelings.
From the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield. Ukraine will take it up. And, say what you want about Ukraine. When the war started, they had no chance. And they still would have had no chance if the equipment, they had the best equipment, because we do make the best planes and missiles, and we make the best military equipment in the world.
Yeah, how are you gonna make this seem as though it's any different than the Biden position now? That's a real question. Because like, how does this look any different than the Biden position? Doesn't this, it is the Biden position for the record. Doesn't this also make you look really stupid? Because now, not only are you taking the Biden position, but you also, for the past couple of months, for no reason whatsoever, ended up harming the Ukrainian position up until you inevitably got back to the Biden position. You got over by Vladimir Putin. I guess the difference is that Trump is actually negotiating. Yeah, but a negotiations process is supposed to happen where you make demands of the opposing side. A negotiation process does not mean you actually over your permaban that chatter. I mean, it was it was brief. It was a small F. It wasn't that big. Okay, calm down.
World by far. We have new things coming out that are beyond belief, and I'm very excited about the Golden Dome. It's going to give us very strong protection. We've already started that, but they had courage because somebody has to use that equipment, and they fought with tremendous courage, and they continue to fight with tremendous courage. But they don't have. They're losing on equipment, and Russia's really taken a very positive, very strong. I mean, what they've done the last.
I can explore why it's happening in the future. It's my ISP most likely.
Missiles, bombing cities. This is not because of military goals. It is just creating panic, keeping people out of their sleeps, hitting towns. Yeah. It's really terrible, and it is meaning a lot of people lose their lives. Whole cities being.
Well, they're wiping out the electric. It's going to take years to rebuild it. That's going to be the next problem. Because, but that's going to take a long time. Cities, many of the cities are knocked down to the ground. Many of the people have left, but many have stayed. I don't know. They actually stay. And most have stayed. Actually, it's incredible that they stay, and knowing that a missile could be hitting your apartment house, and your apartment house that you're sitting in could collapse on top of you.
Apartment house.
And they do very heavy construction. They don't use rebar. They do very thick concrete construction. Those are heavy buildings, big buildings. And heavy buildings, and they collapse like they're made out of paper. It's unbelievable to see this happening with people, so many people being killed. So we think we're going to make progress, and we hope we're going to make progress. In the meantime, we're going to get you good service on what you need. And we really became friendly with NATO this last meeting. You know, we went from 2% to 5%, which everyone said was not even a possibility. They weren't paying 2%. Many of them were paying much less than 2%.
But even those, since you became president, all committed to the 2% before.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You are such a cuck. God damn it. I don't want to hear any, unless our European counterparts are able to do the right thing and overthrow their servile administrators that have sold off their wealth to the American military industrial complex. I don't want to hear about European sovereignty ever again. They're worse than the Gulf states, dude. How is that even possible? Like, they're more servile than the Gulf states are. They're certainly way, way more servile than Latin American countries are. It's 3.5%. Stop lying.
For the summit. And now collectively we committed to the 5%.
That's right. They did. They've been very good. And I think I made a lot of friends over there. We had a couple of days of very intensive talks. And they're great people. They're leaders of countries.
I think one of the craziest, most predictable outcomes of this is going to be it's going to accelerate the destruction of any kind of welfare, any kind of like social safety nets that existed, that has already been like slowly getting hit with austerity measures. And this obviously has created this environment that right-wing fascist parties have taken advantage of. Okay. And the right-wing fascist parties are going to take even more advantage of this to bring up like sovereignty conversations, only to like totally capitulate to Trump, for the record. They'll just do the same thing that Republicans do here, which is blame immigrants, as they already are. They're blaming the refugees. They're blaming Islam, all this shit. And they're going to improve their standing in their own respective democratic processes. And then, of course, they're going to completely stay the course when it comes to America's interests and beefing up their militaries, reforming the UK, AfD in Germany, the Nationalist Party in France, just a way, way more aggressive, more militarized European Union that where racism is the only game in town.
Many of them great countries, some of them smaller countries, but for the most part, I'd say very solid, strong countries, and very among the most successful countries in the world. So that's the story. We hope that's going to have an impact on Vladimir Putin, and we hope it's going to have an impact on Ukraine also. We want to make sure that Ukraine does what they have to do. All of a sudden they may feel emboldened, or maybe they don't want. You know, this is a very difficult situation.
Ukraine wants a peace deal.
I think so.
And they will stay committed to that, there's no doubt. They want it. But the Russians have to become
They have to continue to want it, though.
Yeah, I agree. You and I will make sure of that.
All of a sudden they get no.
You and I will make sure of that.
We'll make sure. I feel confident that they will do what has to be done. Plus, we have certain parameters that both sides know, and we already know what should be done. So I think that's going to be it's going to be very strong. We want everlasting peace.
When people say at least the AfD runs on anti-war, I don't know about the others. I need you to understand it's like the same as Tucker Carlson running on isolationism. It's not real. It's bullshit. They're taking advantage of the lack of interest from liberals and the supposedly like anti-fascist coalition parties that are not anti-war at all. They're taking advantage of the void in communications. That's it. It's the exact same thing that is happening in America, and that is also like, I mean, that's what Trump did. Guys, Trump ran on anti-war. Remember, Trump ran on anti-war, okay? Now, there are real anti-war parties out there, left parties, that are actually anti-war. But their success is stunted by liberals that spend every waking moment launching a strong opposition against them rather than the actual right-wing parties. Now, there is some coalition. Sometimes there are coalitions. There is a little bit of success, like with what France Unbowed was able to pull off. But then look at what Macron did.
Any questions, please? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. What was the tipping point for you in making this decision? Was it a conversation with President Putin? Was it a piece of intelligence? And why are you giving 50 more days?
I think I think it's a very short period of time. I think, don't forget, I've just really been involved in this for not very long. And it wasn't initial focus. This is a Biden war. This is a Democrat war, not a Republican or Trump war. This is a war that would have never happened. It shouldn't have happened. A lot of people being killed. When the final numbers come in, you're going to see a lot more people are being killed in this war than you think, than you've been writing about. It's a very deadly war. They're all bad, but this is a very deadly war. The numbers are going to be far greater. When an apartment house comes down and they say 2 people were slightly injured. No, many people were killed. And those numbers will be at some point accurately reported. So far, they're not. It's a deadly war. I think that you're just going to see, I think you're going to see strong movement. I hope so. I hope so.
And what about
the secondary tariffs are very, very powerful.
What about the tariffs that the Republicans in the House and the Senate have ready? Those were 500%. Sure. Why are you doing 100%?
Well, the Republicans are moving very strongly in the Senate, giving us total control of it. But I'm not sure we need it, but it's certainly good that they're doing it. And Lindsey Graham's working hard. The whole John Thune, all of them, they're all working hard. And they're in coordination with Mike Johnson, Speaker in the House. And I think they've actually crafted a pretty good piece of legislation. It's probably going to pass very easily. And that includes Democrats. And there's some little tweaks. But I don't want to say I don't need it because I don't want them to waste their time. It could be very useful. We'll have to see. But we can do secondary. We're probably talking about 100% or something like that.
So can you clarify?
We can do secondary. We can do secondary tariffs without the Senate, without the House. But what they're crafting also could be very good.
So are you suggesting then that the Congress should move forward with those sanctions, the 500%, and that your 100 would be a separate additional package?
Yeah, I mean, the 500 is, sort of meaningless after a while because at a certain point it doesn't matter. It's not going to be, it's 100. 100 is going to serve the same function. But, I have it at 100%. They may have it at 100 too. They may have it at 500. But they're doing some good work in the House, and I think in the House and the Senate. And as you know, they're coordinated, and they can have it done quickly. They said they'll have it as quickly as I need it. So we'll see. We're talking to him. In fact, John Thune's coming over later on to talk.
Did you call for it yet?
Yeah, he's gonna come over.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it your view that Vladimir Putin mischaracterized his dedication to? Is it your view that Vladimir Putin did not clarify his intention to a peace deal?
Well,
and what happens now in the next phase? Is there?
We're going to see. I mean, we're going to go for a period of time. Maybe he'll start negotiating. And I think I felt, I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt that we had a deal about 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are, still talking about.
And he didn't send serious people to the negotiations. So I remember that you were able, with Marco Rubio and with Steve Witkoff, to get these talks going in Istanbul.
Yep.
I remember I was myself in Turkey for NATO business in May.
Yeah. Say how brilliant he was, Mark.
We really put pressure on the Ukrainians to send a senior team into Istanbul, and they did. But then the Russians came up with this historian explaining history of Russia.
Say how brilliant he was, dude. Go ahead.
We thought, and I thought, we should have had a deal done a long time ago. But it just keeps going on and on and on. And every night people are dying. A lot of Russian soldiers are dying, by the way. And a lot of Ukrainian soldiers too. But a lot of Russian soldiers are dying.
100,000 Russian soldiers since 1st of January. Since January. 100,000 Russian soldiers dead since January. So if anybody in Moscow is listening to this, again,
dude, that is okay. That part, that level of glaze is inappropriate. Okay, this level of glaze is unacceptable. I'm sorry. Even saying that like Trump actually was brilliant in terms of dealing with Russia, that is crazy. To be like, oh, you did such a good job, Mr. President, by forcing Zelensky's hand into taking a shitty deal. Like, who the believes that? You are daddy, Mr. President. You are daddy.
100,000 dead Russians since January. This is what President Putin is doing at the moment.
Yeah, please.
Will these be Patriot missiles specifically, or Patriot batteries that you're planning? And
Everything.
when do you
everything? It's Patriots. It's all of them. It's a full complement with the batteries.
And when do you expect them to arrive in Ukraine, sir?
Well, we're going to have some come very soon, within days actually. Because a couple of the countries that have Patriots are going to swap over, and will replace the Patriots with the ones they have, and Matt will coordinate with NATO. But so it's going to be, they're going to start arriving very soon.
And this afternoon, Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, is visiting Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and we'll discuss also, I think, on this whole Patriot thing. Norway is involved, so that's on the Patriots, but this whole deal is also about missiles or ammunition, so it's broader than Patriots.
We have one country that has 17 Patriots getting ready to be shipped. They're not going to need them for them. So we're going to work a deal where the 17 will go, or a big portion of the 17 will go to the war side.
Mr. President.
That can be done very quickly.
Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yeah, please.
could this transaction with NATO be viewed as a step towards achieving peace, letting Putin know that now Zelensky has a little bit more powerful tools in his tool chest, and maybe that brings him to the table to achieve peace? I know that you wanted to do that.
Brian, that's what we've been saying. I think you might have expressed it better if you wanted to.
Wait, okay. I mean, isn't that, giving Ukraine more leverage so they have a better bargain in terms of ceasefire talks is literally the original Biden answer. Obviously, they were not interested in negotiating with Russia at all, Western powers. But that was how they sold it originally. That's literally how they sold it. What happened? The question I got here for everybody is, how is this any different than what Biden said he wanted to do? Trump made a promise. Trump made a promise to change the trajectory here, peace, and focus on a ceasefire. He was Mr. I'm going to end all the wars. Also, this is quite the anti-Semitic prospect, I might add, especially considering that every single one of those Patriot missiles could be sent to the most moral nation on the planet, and instead is now being sent to a nation that is not so moral, Ukraine, as opposed to the most moral nation on the planet, Israel. After all, Israel can make better use of these Patriot missiles by, I don't know, agitating yet another regional power player or something, and then will have to defend itself. Israel, after all, has a right to defend itself, a right that transcends beyond other countries' national boundaries. It's quite up that these guys are even sitting around talking about any sort of extra batteries going anywhere but Israel. I really don't like it. I hate to say it, chat. It seems like Donald Trump is behaving in an anti-Semitic fashion. Iran is just sitting there menacingly. Yeah, Moravia has a right to defend itself. Historic Moravian land. No politique here.
That's exactly what
That was a summary.
That was a nice summary. I think he's done better than us. He's a very good guy, I can tell you that. But no, it's well said. Yeah, I think this is a chance at getting peace. Or it's just going to be the same thing. I have to tell you, Europe has a lot of spirit for this war. A lot of people, when I first got involved, I really didn't think they did, but they do. And I saw that a month ago, and you were there, many of you were there. The level of esprit de corps, spirit that they have is amazing. They really think it's a very, very important thing to do, or they wouldn't be doing it. Look, they're agreeing to, they're paying for everything. We're not paying anymore. We have an ocean separating us. I said, we have a problem. We make the best stuff, but we can't keep doing this. And Biden should have done this years ago. He should have done it from the beginning, but he didn't. He didn't know he was there. This guy, what a horrible job they did to this country. And I just hope between the border and this and so many other, inflation, what a horrible administration. The worst administration in history, in my opinion. It's not my opinion. I think it's everybody's opinion. But this is something that shouldn't have happened, and we're going to see if we can end it.
If I can follow up.
I do want to make one statement. Again, I said it before. This is not Trump's war. We're here to try and get it finished and settled and whatever. Because nobody wins with this. This is a loser from every standpoint.
From day
This
one.
was Biden and this was other people. And it's very sad. It's a very sad situation. This gentleman.
Isn't that right, Mark? Or Mike? Whatever your name is. Doesn't Biden suck? Say Biden sucks, Rutte.
He's doing a great job. I think he's going to get it, and Matt and everybody else that's working on it. I think he'll get this thing over with, hopefully.
Mr. President, you've praised European countries today as standing up for Ukraine, as being strong. Will you allow them to continue to negotiate tariffs lower than 30% before August 1st, or is the deal set at this point?
What does that mean? You mean you're talking about the tariffs?
On trade, on tariffs.
You're back on tariffs. You're on a more friendly tariff, right? A little bit more friendly tariff.
Perhaps.
No, we're going to be talking to people. We have, I watched the show this morning. They were talking about, well, when's he going to make the deal? The deals are already made. The letters are the deals. The deals are made. They would like to do a different kind of a deal, and we're always open to talk. We are open to talk, including to Europe. In fact, they're coming over. They'd like to talk to us.
Mr. President, is there any concern about the U.S. stockpiles? There was a pause in delivery of weaponry to Ukraine in order to evaluate, apparently, the U.S. stockpiles. What came out of that?
Evaluation. I mean, this was a very big, what we're talking about today is a very, very big day. And what Pete was doing, and me too, I knew what Pete was doing, was evaluation, because we knew this was going to happen. And now we actually announced it. They voted on it. It's all been done. So obviously that has a big impact on, when you say pause, obviously you're not going to be doing things if you don't know what's going to happen here. But we were pretty sure this was going to happen, so we did a little bit of a pause. But this is a very big event today. This is something
Mr.
very
President, if Putin escalates further, how far are you willing to go in response?
In what?
How far are you willing to go if Putin were to escalate, send more bombs in the coming days?
Don't ask me a question like that. How far? I want to get the war settled. They're not Americans that are dying in it, and I have a problem. And JD,
Nasty question. Asking me how far I'll go. Nasty. I don't want to think about it.
he has a problem. It's a stance that he's had for a long time. They're not Americans dying, but there are a lot of people dying, and on something that should be able to be settled. And we all agree with that. This group of people, you know, we want to defend our country, but, you know, ultimately, having a strong Europe is a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, please, in the back.
Yeah, is there a ceiling on what the Europeans are willing to pay for? And it sounds like, well, are you ruling out the U.S. paying for some from additional weapons through drawdown authority?
Shall I try to answer that? Because basically what the president is saying, that he is willing, of course, taking consideration what the U.S. needs itself. So it's not that you can have a shopping list and you can order whatever you want, because the U.S. has to make sure that the U.S. keeps its hand on what the U.S. needs, also to keep the whole world safe, because in the end you are the police agent of the whole world. You are the most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful military on earth. But given that...
Oh my God, bro. Wipe it off before you speak, bro. Wipe it off. You're gargling. Oh my God. The U.S. is the most moral and the biggest military, the best police force in the world. Oh my God. Hawk Rutte. Yeah, Hawk Tua is what he's doing. Holy fuck.
The U.S. has decided to indeed massively supply Ukraine with what is necessary through NATO. Europeans 100% paying for that. And what we have been doing over the last couple of days is talking with countries, and I just mentioned the ones who in the first wave immediately said, we want to chip in. And then you're really talking about big numbers. Take Germany visiting today. They're really talking about big numbers.
Can we get some clarity?
I will say that I spoke with Germany, spoke with most of the larger countries, and they are really enthusiastic about this. They want to, and you know, they're willing to go very far. I will tell you, you know, as per your question, how far would I go? They want to go very far. They don't want this to happen. That's why I think from Putin's standpoint, it would really be good. He gets the country's economy is doing very poorly, and he's got to get his economy back. He's got to save his economy. He could save his country in a sense, but the economy can destroyed a lot of countries over the years. He wants to get that economy back. And, you know, he's got a great country for trading and other things. If they could use the assets instead of war, he's got...
Can we get a Mark Rutte emote? Yeah, we already have one. It's called Writing in all caps. It's this one. I've never seen such a sexual display.
Some tremendous potential, that's what I would say.
How did you deliver this news to Putin, sir?
Say?
How did you tell Putin this was coming?
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. I say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I go home, I tell the First Lady, you know, I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation.
Bro, why are you saying this out loud? It's so embarrassing, dude.
She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit. So it's like, look, he's, I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama. But what I do say is that at a certain point, you know, ultimately talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action. It's got to be results. And I hope he...
You just described him fooling you, by your own admission, more than 4 times. You're literally the most sad I've ever seen you. He just explained how he got tricked on numerous occasions with Vladimir Putin after having a delightful conversation. He just turns around and is like, oh yeah, I would love to do a ceasefire, and then blows up another Ukrainian city. What is that if not being fooled?
Does it? It's potentially such a great country to be wasting so many people on this and the money. And look at what's happened to his economy. Look at what's happened. So,
and with the threat in 50 days,
yeah,
the economy will be hit very hard.
I mean, look, I hope he's going to do it. He knows the deal. He knows what a fair deal is. If there is such a thing as a fair deal, there's no winners here. This is a loser. This is a loser. And I dealt with him from the beginning. It wouldn't have happened, but I will say Ukraine was the apple of his eye. We talk about it. It was the apple of his eye, but it wasn't going to happen. And he understood that. It wasn't going to happen. And then I noticed, after I was out, I noticed soldiers forming at the border.
Yeah.
And then I heard horrible, stupid things being said from the other side. And I said, they're really handling it very, very wrong. It's a shame. Yeah.
Can I add one thing, and that is about President Trump, because you came in office in January. On the 12th of February, you had your first phone call with Putin. I think you did exactly what I hope you would do. That is breaking the deadlock, starting the conversation, because you have to test him. I know Putin very well from the days when I was Prime Minister in the Netherlands. You have to test him. And you did this, and you really gave him a chance to be serious, to get to the table, to start negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, we all tried to help you. But you've now come to a point where you say, well, hey...
We actually thought we had probably 4 times the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have called and we said, this looks good.
Yeah.
And then the deal wouldn't happen because bombs would be thrown out that night and you'd say, we're not making any deals. It was like...
But you breaking the deadlock was crucial because you had to start that process. And you were the only one who was able to do that.
I think we'll get it done.
Do you think he's reasonable enough to negotiate an end to
I think
this?
we're going to get it done. I think, look, this is a very powerful situation. You have very wealthy countries buying the best equipment in the world. And we have the best equipment in the world. We make equipment like no other. You know, our submarines, nuclear submarines, are so powerful. They're the most powerful weapon ever built. And we have the best. They're 20 years behind, 25 years behind us. We have the greatest equipment anywhere in the world. I just hope we don't have to use it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a separate topic here, President Biden, of all people, spoke to the New York Times over the weekend. He did not speak to them on the record during his time in office at all, but he spoke to them recently. And he defended his use of the autopen and said that he signed off on every decision. But at the same time, the Times reports that he did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. What are your take on that? Any new revelations from that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the autopen. Look, the autopen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal. And I know the people on the other side of the, see that desk, that Resolute desk? Unfortunately, he used it before me. But, you know, we have a choice of 7 desks. They're all beautiful, but I chose the Resolute, and so did he, unfortunately. But the people on the other side of the Resolute desk, I know them. Lisa, the whole group, and they're no good. They're sick people. And I guarantee you he knew nothing about what he was signing. I guarantee it. So they're going to figure it out, and we'll see what happens. But to me, the autopen, you know, you elected president. You know what the autopen is supposed to do? Sign thousands of letters from young people that write. We get thousands of letters a week, Susie, right? Thousands. I mean, tens of thousands sometimes. I look at a room, there's a room where we have many, many people working, responding and sending letters back. That's what an autopen's supposed to be.
Biden's autopen. Leave me out of this. Don't listen to this guy. Eyes emoji. What did you do? Autopen. Biden's autopen. Thousands from the standpoint of letter writing. Autopens are, that's what they're supposed to do. So many young people writing letters to me.